According to the ORF and others like the World Food Programme, nearly 830 million people right now in the world are facing the risk of hunger. And when we categorize it into those facing the most severe risk, the number has doubled in the last 2 years. And the reasons are COVID-19, conflict, and climate change. So our next conversation expands on what we're hearing about development objectives, and we're talking about a very simple but fundamental principle: the ability of people to put food on their tables. It's the essence of dignity. And the ability of countries to gain food self-sufficiency. It's the essence of a functioning state. Adebayo Babalola is the acting director in the strategy unit for the OPEC fund, and he's going to lead this conversation and dialogue on sustainable food systems.
Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, partners, and friends of the OPEC Fund, we're very happy to welcome you to this dialogue on sustainable food systems. Food insecurity is a critical global challenge. At the moment, it's been worsened by the pandemic. We've had issues with conflict, and we've had extreme climate events that have also worsened the numbers. So it's clear that international actors like ourselves in this room need to sharpen our crisis response capabilities. We also have to invest in the sustainable development of sustainable infrastructure and support our partner countries and clients in enhancing the value chains and improving supply chains. This informed the OPEC Fund's approach to its Food Security Action Plan. We committed to deploy $1 billion over a 3-year period to support our partner countries and clients. But Your Excellencies, it's clear that we still have a huge problem. As Lerato said, over 800 million people don't have access to adequate food supplies. So to interrogate these issues, we have a distinguished panel of industry leaders. I'll start and run through the introductions because we don't have a lot of time. I'll start with His Excellency, Dr. Sidita, who is the Director General of the Arab Bank for Economic Development in Africa. Welcome. We also have an important private sector player, and we've heard over different discussions the importance of the private sector. So we have Mr. Jay Shroff, who is the CEO of UPL Limited. Welcome. We also have a key partner here in Engineer Hani Salem Sombol, His Excellency, who is the CEO of the Islamic Trade Finance Corporation, and he also wears a second hat as the acting CEO of the Islamic Corporation for Development in the Private Sector. Welcome. And finally, but certainly not the least, we have Dr. Stanley Samkange, who is the Senior Director in charge of Strategic Partnerships at the UN's World Food Programme. So welcome to our distinguished panelists. And staying with you, Dr. Samkange, the World Food Programme is a critical player right at the heart of food security interventions, and you work in over 80 countries. From your perspective, what would you say are the critical challenges we have in food systems?
Thank you very much, moderator, and thank you to the OPEC Fund for inviting us to be part of this panel. First, let me just say, as was said in the last panel by our last speaker, we look at food systems two ways. One, global food systems and national food systems. You need both of these to be functioning well, but the two are not the same. And one of the challenges for the international community is to make sure that one doesn't come at the expense of the other. For us, food systems are important because, of course, when you need to respond in a crisis, you rely on global food systems to do that. National food systems are important because the more robust and resilient those systems are, the less you'll be called upon to do international response. But food systems are also important as an engine for economic growth, for smallholder farmers, for markets. So what are we concerned about? We're concerned about shocks, climate, conflict, pandemics. These are things that we are concerned about. Food system, the global food system is not as robust as we thought it was, and investments are needed to make global food systems more robust. National food systems should be viewed as national security. We saw during the pandemic, we've seen during the crisis what happens when national food systems don't respond the way that they are needed. So that's why we look at investments in national food systems in the global architecture as key. That's why we signed an agreement yesterday with the OPEC fund to collaborate.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Dr. Samkange. I think the key takeaway there is the importance of global food systems, but also the fact that national food systems are a key critical element of national security. But I think another element that we need to talk about and move into Engineer Sunbol is the element of trade finance. You know, trade finance could be viewed as the lifeblood of food supplies, given the importance of supply chains. But as we've witnessed, of course, over the last few years, that this is, subject to disruptions from conflict, from the pandemic, or whatever it is. From your perspective, what is it we can do to improve the resilience of trade financing going forward?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Actually, I would like to thank OPEC Fund for actually their kind invitation and be really a part of this very august gathering here today in Vienna. We've spoke a lot about really what is the issues with climate change and agricultural issues for the last two years, food security. We've been talking a lot about this very important topics, without really seeing much, as Dr. Mahmoud said, much advances in the way we are really trying to reach our results. I remember when I first joined the development banking 40 years back, I remember the complexity of these issues were totally different, dealing with 57 member countries, mainly 2/3 of them on the least developed countries, and we were not so much, we have not seen really much of this complexity. IDB Group, as IDB, of course, was maybe the first MDB to really have a devoted trade finance department. At that time, people were questioning actually why we are doing trade finance. Many did not recognize that trade finance at that time was the engine of growth. But in fact, nowadays, it became very evident that this is really the way to, as they say this morning also, to keep the flow going. In years after gaining so much experience, we felt that also we have to become resilient as institution by being able actually to develop and produce really solutions for member countries. As they say, maybe the funding is not the end of the solution. Actually, the funding is part of the solution. That's why we are very much now more of an integrated, solutions that sometimes based on technology and based on innovation, just to support member countries. We've started really to make sure that ITFC can, and ICD as well, can always provide, financing to our member countries. Many issues under our solutions are addressed. When we face, for example, climate change, when we face food security issues, our really main, I would say, objective is actually to help member countries understand that there are so many issues in terms of what was said in terms of policies, in terms of regulations, but also helping this very particular point on the food security is to help member countries diversify the source actually of their food supplies. We have the largest portfolio in ITFC actually devoted for energy and food supplies. And almost like $11 billion was really devoted for this topic. We were trying to help countries to diversify, as I said, because some people say we are paying for globalization. We are trying to see how a continent like Africa today can have an added value by really having to go one step, without really exporting raw material to others and bring it back again to the country with no added value. We're trying to help that. We're trying also to help now with the climate change, issues, to have what we call the climate resilient crops, like the heated or heat resilient wheat, farming, like in Ethiopia and others who have made a very successful stories. We try to promote also sustainable, farming practices by helping small farmers as well as large farmers in member countries. Take coffee, for example, in Indonesia. We have tried to really bring to them the best practices for what? For them to really improve the yield of their land and become more resilient. I think that's one of the really, I would say, solutions that we provide. We are getting into the small, medium, also, I would say, sector by trying to help them also decarbonize. Yeah. ITFC was the first, actually, Islamic institution that really gets the Sharia approval for really what we call carbon credit offsetting, mechanisms. And we have participated in 2 auctions on that. I have a lot to say.
Of course, and it's so fascinating to us. But we have 10 more minutes, so just so that we can quickly run through the other questions. And coming to Dr. Ta, Badia, strong track record investing in infrastructure. From your perspective, particularly in Africa, what's the link between the infrastructure investments and the development of sustainable food systems?
Thank you very much. I do believe that we cannot talk about food security in Africa without thinking about small farmers. And we cannot also talk about any economic development in Africa without talking about micro, small, and medium enterprises. And this is why Badia, in its strategy Badia 2030, has retained micro, small, and medium enterprises as one of the main pillars of the strategy, but also agricultural value chain and infrastructure as a third pillar. So you see that all these pillars are intertwined, and we cannot develop a climate resilient agriculture without developing resilient infrastructure. And Badia has a long track record of more than 4 decades of implementing successful projects which make it easier for small farmers in remote areas in Africa to be able to grow their crops, but also to take them to market. What we have learned from this experience is what has been highlighted by Chairman Admaso this morning regarding the need for partnership. So no single institution can alone be able to achieve any success in any endeavor without other partners. We also learned from our experience that we need to work with all the stakeholders and to adopt a holistic approach. Otherwise, we will not be able to continue to work in silos. That way, will not be able to enable any institution to deliver on its development mandate. This is why we do believe that the integrated approach is quite critical. We are working with AgFund, for instance. Dr. Nasser is here. We are working with them on an integrated approach to bring microfinance, microinsurance, quality seeds, extension services, education, and many other players to work together and to provide integrated solution for the small farmers.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ta. That's very, very interesting. And just bringing the conversation around to climate, because of course climate and development are intertwined, particularly when it comes to food security. Now, Mr. Shroff, You speak a lot about emissions as they relate to agriculture and the agricultural sector. Given global decarbonization efforts, what more can we do, and how can we reduce emissions specific to the food sector?
Thank you very much. Real honor to be here and really represent the private sector. There's so much dependent on private sector. From all the discussions, I think private sector is a key player. My business, my company is present in 138 countries, really working with farmers on ground and bringing technology to agriculture. Just to address this in a slightly different way, the amount, we talk about sustainable agriculture, we talk about sustainable food, we talk about climate, decarbonizing, and it's all these are huge subjects. And I just want to simplify it. The amount of money we are spending on energy transition, the world is spending on energy transition. The amount of money we're spending on mobility transition to EVs and the incentives being given to private sector and towards decarbonizing that sector. What are we really doing towards agriculture? And I just want to introduce a word called agriculture transition towards sustainability. And when you look at that, who are the players, and what are we really doing towards incentivizing or driving agriculture transition? And I just want to bring a few benefits. Agriculture transition towards sustainability can bring many benefits. First of all, food security. There's such a lot of discussion in the last 2 years about food security. Secondly, poverty reduction. The small farmers in the world are getting poor, and we expect them to decarbonize, to supply sustainable food. As one of the speakers earlier said, you cannot expect the poorest people, the chairman of Islamic Development Bank, you cannot expect people who cannot feed their children to talk about sustainability. And third thing is so poverty reduction, food security, and really climate impact, decarbonize the world. These are the benefits of agriculture transition. So far more than energy transition, far more than EVs or mobility transition. Even then, there is a lot less resources given to agriculture transition. I just want to say that, farmers, the smallholder farmer, which supplies 80% of the world food, is the center. And we cannot expect the food system to be resilient, food security to be available if the farmer, as we go forward, becomes poorer and poorer. So we need to create an environment by which sustainable food systems rewards farmers for sustainable behavior, like we are doing in every other sector. And at UPL, we are focused on building farmer resilience. And we believe if the farmer cannot feed his family or send his children to school, it's no point of discussing anything else with him. He cannot worry about feeding the world. And I just want to add that at UPL, we are working on different technologies. We are advising countries on climate-ready crops, climate-smart crops, climate-smart systems. We are talking about rewarding farmers with decarbonizing the world. We are bringing in micro-insurance. This year, we will micro-insure 3 million farmers where they will get paid within 7 days of a weather event, which is basically parametric insurance. And then we are bringing in technologies which help farmers fight climate change and survive through really this erratic weather systems.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We have 2.5 minutes and we don't want to keep people from lunch, but I still need to extract some information from you. So we're going to have a quick fire round, starting with Dr. Samkange. How do we boost social safety nets and ensure that social protection is improved so that we focus on the people and improve their food outcomes?
Yeah, well, one of the challenges of achieving food security is that it's multi-sectoral. It's not just agriculture, it's not energy, it's not water, it's not logistics, it's all of those things. It's also social protection. countries need to, as they become wealthier, put in place systems to protect people, social protection systems. But actually, that's in some ways the easier part. The harder part is how do you get people off of social protection? How do you get them out? And that's why economic growth, that's why development, that's so critical. Nobody can be food secure if you don't have jobs, if you don't have a livelihood. So that's why, although we're focused on humanitarian efforts, the development agenda is really critical.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Mr. Shroff, knowledge sharing is critical to any development outcomes. Could you share some experience from your work in India, particularly climate risk insurance for smallholder farmers?
Yeah, so I mentioned briefly, we have instant insurance policies of $50 to $500 where farmers who get impacted by 30 days of no rain or excess rain get paid out instantly through a digital platform, no human interface. He gets an SMS, money gets into his wallet. So those sort of things allow farmers to replant their seed, allow him to really compensate. And because the government of India and around the world pay 3 months, 4 months after the effect. But if a farmer loses his germination to 50% of the seed he's planted because of a weather event, there's no way he can make money because that's capped his productivity. So there's so many other ways bringing in technology. There is enough, I just want to make one more point. There is enough technology to reduce carbon emissions from agriculture by 10% by every farmer in the world. If 25% of the emissions is happening from agriculture, a 10% reduction is actually more than what the UN requires. That's 2.5% reduction. And are we rewarding the food system enough? Are we rewarding the center stage, that is the farmer, enough to really to make an effort towards decarbonizing the world?
Excellent. Thank you. And I'll just move to Dr. Tar. In 30 seconds or less, the African Continental Free Trade Area is an important initiative. It's meant to improve supply chains. How is Badia engaging in this?
This is a very important development in Africa, and Badia has immediately launched what we call the Africa Trade Facility, which is meant to support cross-border trade among African countries, and with a special focus on food security, fertilizer, and also crops. And more importantly, the bank also is funding regional integration project, including bridges, roads, linking landlocked country with coastal areas, linking rural areas with urban areas. And the bank also is supporting energy infrastructure, interconnection among African countries, among many other infrastructure.
Absolutely, thank you. And coming finally to close the session with Engineer Sumbo, and we ask you to take off your ITFC hat for 30 seconds and put on the acting CEO of ICD Act. How can we mobilize the private sector?
Thank you very much. Allow me just to follow up on Dr. Sidi for 1 second, because he has mentioned really this excellent synergy that now we are building in Africa through this very excellent program, but also on the Arab-Africa Trade Bridge. This is the largest program with the largest partners, with you as Africa Exim Bank, with Badia, with others. We are trying to make really the best out of that. We will be, inshallah, announcing very soon this Arab-Africa Trade Bridge food security program. This is something else other than the IDB 10.5 billion program that was announced last year. But in ICD is, of course, a very active member in the group. And what makes IDB Group unique group is that the diversity of products that we really offer. And this is why we are really trying to build internal synergy so that the impact of the group financing can be greater and greater in member countries. ICD, of course, is really the arm to support the private sector through really providing financing, to the private sector's strategic, I would say strategic projects, especially in the area of storage, in the area of really supporting the countries, programs. We also have this promoting investment, activities. We have the providing capacity building as well in ICD by providing also the green finance, also Sukuk for member countries to be able to keep up with this world direction. We also have the private, what we call private sector advisory services. That is very important, where we provide advisory to the companies. In addition to that, through equity and through term financing, we are actually participating in agri-tech and agribusiness, companies that is spread all over the African continent and also other member countries.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And on that fascinating note, we've come to the end of this panel. We've gotten some very interesting insights. We've heard about how we need to make social systems more sustainable. We heard about the link between national systems and food security and actually country security. We've heard about the need to provide climate risk insurance to smallholder farmers. And we've heard about fascinating work on the African Continental Free Trade Zone. So thank you for listening, and thank you to the distinguished panelists. If you could please give them a round of applause while we leave the stage.